Good evening, and welcome to The Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy, and today is August 21st, 2018. We are approaching the midterm elections, and the excitement and the consternation could not be more riveting than anything. It is as riveting as anything we have seen in a very long time in American politics. Many people believe that this midterm could be one of the crucial elections in American history. And why is that? It's because you have two ways of looking at governing this country. One way is the Democratic way, one way is the Republican way. This is a gross oversimplification, I will admit that. But recently we've seen a divide which is roughly divided, which roughly separates the two sides, and the division is greater than we have seen in the past. Now, it's true that the Republican Party have a whole range of views. Same way on the Democratic Party. And both parties are seeing a movement to the other side because both parties are becoming more polarized. So you have on the left, you have the walk away movement, and hashtag walk away, which is a movement in which people who were Democrats walk away, maybe not from the Democratic Party, but they walk away from the extreme ideology, the socialist ideology that is overtaking the Democratic Party. And what they do is they videotape their feelings and they explain why they decided to walk away. And it's not run away, it's not a hostile act necessarily, and it may not even be permanent, but they're just rejecting some of the extreme views that are getting a lot of airtime and becoming popular in the Democratic Party, on the Democratic side. And why is that happening? It's happening partly in response to the election of Donald Trump. If a Democrat, Hillary Clinton, had been elected, you would not be seeing such an extreme turnabout toward the far left. Hillary Clinton would have followed the playbook of Barack Obama, who followed the playbook of Bush, the second Bush, George W. In other words, she would have continued with the gradual movement away from the center and more leftward. And we have to remember that George W. Bush was known as a corporate president. Barack Obama was also a corporate president. Hillary Clinton would have been a corporate president. What does it mean when I say corporate president? I mean, to a large extent, they are controlled by major multinational corporations and international banks. In other words, they're controlled from a strata of society that many people are really not even fully aware of how much power they have. The power elite, if you will. And this is a small group of people who consider themselves to be internationalists, or sometimes people use the word globalists. And they want one world government that is controlled by them and is socialistic in nature. And why would they want a socialist government rather than a capitalist government? The elites, the super elites, the super wealthy, really like socialism because it benefits them. And you would say, well, why would it benefit them? It's because the super elites do not suffer from high taxation. Let me repeat that. The super elites, the super wealthy, do not suffer from high taxation. They have the wherewithal, they have the political clout, they have the lawyers, they have all their ducks in a row in order to make their businesses virtually run almost tax-free. As Warren Buffett very famously said, Warren Buffett is one of the richest men in the world, said that his secretary pays a way higher percentage of her salary in taxes than he does. So the super wealthy are not taxed. And they're not taxed because they control the government. They have the corporations, they control the corporations, they control the government. They control the men and women who are elected for the most part. And so you can very clearly see that when Barack Obama receives a tremendous amount of money from international, multinational corporations, and Hillary Clinton does too, and so does George Bush. I mean, George W. Bush, it's more than just receiving money with George W. Bush. I mean, the guy was born into it. Utterly, completely born into a power elite family that is above the law. I mean, the Bush family has been engaged in extreme levels of crime for many decades, including trying to overthrow the U.S. government back in the 1930s. Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush. You can look it up for yourself. It's called the business plot. They tried to overthrow the government and install a fascist government. And fascism is just the other side, is just another form of socialism. So don't be fooled when they try to tell you that fascism is like capitalism. Fascism is not even remotely like capitalism. Fascism is just another name for communism or socialism because you have state-run businesses. The state owns everything. That's what happens in communism and socialism. Socialism and communism and fascism are basically all tyrannical forms of government. They may not start out to be tyrannical. They may start out by helping people a lot. Because they're dictators, they have the power to get things done. Remember Mussolini famously. The Italians loved him when he first came into power. And he invented the name fascism, by the way. He was a socialist. Mussolini was. You could look it up. He was the left wing. But he decided that he didn't want communist-style socialism, like in the Soviet Union. What he wanted was something different, something that would be purely national, just about Italy, not international. Communism is more international. They want that one world government. They want, so Mussolini decided that he would combine socialism with nationalism because nationalism is dear to people's hearts. Italians love Italy. They love their culture. They love their history. They love just being together as Italians, just like any country. does. And he thought, you know what, I can use this. This is natural, this is innate. So I can fuse this with socialism and have a powerful force. And he won on that. And he called himself a fascist. And it comes from the Latin. The Romans used the fascisti, there was a bundle of sticks that they used. The Romans did. It was a symbol. Tie all the sticks together and they're a lot stronger than they are separately. Because, again, Mussolini, appealing to the nationalism, wanted to remind people of ancient Rome, the glory that was Rome, the ancient world empire of Rome that, of course, fell, a couple thousand years before that, or almost a couple thousand years. And so he was very successful for a short time. And because he was given all this power, which is what happens in a socialist government and a communist government and a fascist government, you hand over the power to the leader, the small group at the top. And so in order to get the loyalty of the people, to increase the loyalty of the people, he started to do a lot of things that they liked. And he had the power to do that. No one could stand against him because they would be arrested. They would be stifled. They would be censored. They would be even killed. Whatever it took to quell all opposition is what Mussolini did. And then Hitler, of course, followed right along after him and took a lot of his style from Mussolini and then ended up, really making something that was a danger to the entire world out of it. Just like has happened in many other countries. Stalin's Soviet Union, Mao's China, Pol Pot in Cambodia, different dictators. We have the dictator in Venezuela who instigated a socialist state. And a lot of Americans, people like Sean Penn, went down there and they loved it. They thought it was great. The Sandinistas in Nicaragua overthrew a dictator and installed a socialist government. And just like is what's happening in Nicaragua, in which you have people desperately fighting against the tyranny that has resulted from giving over their power to socialism. The same thing is going on in Venezuela. And I guess it's way worse in Venezuela than it is in Nicaragua. Their leadership has been so corrupt, has been so incompetent. They don't understand how money works. Right now they just came up with this cockamamie idea about devaluing their currency down to practically nothing, and they're trying to somehow revive the country. The country is just collapsing. I mean, people are starving. People are desperately trying to get out of Venezuela now. I'm just hearing on the news today they're trying to get to Brazil, they're trying to get to Ecuador, and these countries really don't want them, for the most part, because they have no jobs, no money. These are not incredibly wealthy countries themselves. And ultimately, probably everyone from Venezuela would ultimately like to get to the United States, I imagine. And then you have this resurgence of communism, which has failed wherever it's instituted. I can't think of a socialist state, a truly socialist state, that has prospered in the long run. what they do is they try to run the country by taxing and spending, taxing the people, taxing those who they can tax. As I said, the wealthy, the landed families, the most wealthy people in Venezuela, and this happens in almost every country, they can avoid paying those high taxes. So it falls on the ordinary folks, the middle class, to be squeezed of every spare dollar that they have to run programs. And what it does is it drives business and industry, smaller ones. The multinationals, they're okay with it because they're multinational. They're above the level of taxation of countries. But the ordinary people who live in those countries end up having to pay for what turns out to be usually corrupt systems that waste, incompetence, theft is involved, and the whole thing collapses. So the middle class pays their taxes and they expect to get something in return, but they don't. They end up not getting anything in return. They're thinking, okay, well, if we can get everybody educated, if we can fix the roads, good health care, maybe that'll work for everyone. But it just never seems to work in the long run. It may work at first, but gradually people get worn down in the middle class. They get worn down because they're seeing that they're working really hard, but they're not allowed to enjoy the fruit of their labor. They're not allowed to get ahead because the taxes strip away what's extra. They can't grow their businesses. They don't have the capital to grow their businesses. And of course, a purely communist system, it's even worse because, that's just a socialist. That's just, where socialism is dabbling. They're working toward the pure communist system. Gradually, as the businesses fail in the socialist system, they're taken over by the government or the multinationals, which is their plan all along, and they're swept into the giant multinational maw, which is a never-ending, they're never satisfied. They're never satisfied. They never have enough. They never have enough power. They never have enough money. They just want everything. And ultimately, they want the people to be just simply dead. They want to take everything they have and eventually even their lives. And we saw this happen in Cambodia. We saw it happen in China. We saw it happen in the Soviet Union. We got to remember, when the Soviet Union was founded back in the early part of the 20th century, when the Bolsheviks took over, first they demonized the middle class. They said they were selfish, they were greedy, they were liars, they were cheaters, and the poor people they were the true workers, and they deserved what the middle class had. And the middle class in Soviet Russia were mostly wealthy farmers. Because in those days, that's what you did. You were a farmer. Just like in America at that time, America was full of family farms at that time, in most places around the world. That's what you did. And so they collectivized those farms. They took the farms away from those middle-class peasants, you could call them, wealthy peasants, wealthy, the landowners, who employed all these people, and they collectivized everything. And they said it'll be a lot more efficient under just one system. So you have one small group of men who are running the production of food in the entire country. Those decisions, they have the complete control over when a crop is planted, how it's watered, how it's fertilized, when it's harvested, and all the other complex mechanisms that take place are now under the control of some small group, essentially in Moscow, I guess, probably smaller satellite, of party members, and these party members are selected not so much because they know so much about farming, but because what? They are loyal to the party. They are loyalists. They're good Bolsheviks. Oh, they are friends with so-and-so. Oh, we were in the revolution together. We stormed the Winter Palace together. We helped do this and we helped do that. And so they deserve a reward. And so we'll make them such and such minister for such and such. And you see how this goes. So you have essentially people who don't know anything about farming in control. And what did you have in the Soviet Union after the Bolsheviks took over? You had a massive famine because the crops failed, because of the incompetence. And you had the people who were running, people who had the farms, they had owned those farms for many generations, hundreds of years. They knew when to plant. They knew the particulars of that land, of each field, of how to do it. They'd learned through trial and error over generations how to get the very best crop. They knew about the weather in that particular region. They knew about the drainage. They knew about the water issues, and all the issues that are involved in running a farm. And this can only be done economically, feasibly, and profitably on the local level. And this is what happens when you take away the power from the people at the local level and you give it to a bunch of very often incompetent and even corrupt officials whose loyalty is not to the people, but to the party, to themselves. They often want to enrich themselves. That's really the reason why they're there. They see that this is a gravy train for them. They can prosper, and they do prosper. And this is what we see happen in country after country after country after country. And unless reforms are instituted, allowing those people to have their land back, to reintroduce capitalism, because a farmer is essentially a capitalist. He is working for the benefit of himself and his family, but also he understands that his customers will also benefit from a good harvest. And they'll be happy to pay him, and so he can make a profit, so that he can continue in business and also provide them with food next year and the year after that and the year after that and the year after that. And then his son or his daughter will take over the farm when he dies, and then it will continue on. And the food source of the quality food. And the capitalism also encourages competition. Whereas if you collectivize everything, where's the competition? Where's the reward for hard work, for innovation, for integrity, for honesty. There is no reward for those things. Now, Soviet Union and of course Communist China and other communist countries try to do that. They make this abstract appeal to patriotism. They give you prizes, they give you awards, they give you medals for doing a good job. Oh, comrade, you invented an improvement on this this farm machinery. We're going to give you the honorary award of, of Lenin, for farming. Wow. You should be proud. You can put that on your wall. It's great. Okay, but that really doesn't put food on the table. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help your family. When everything is owned by the state, that improvement that you make, you don't own that improvement you made, that innovation. And so it discourages innovation. And that's one thing about America, is that we encourage, because we have a capitalist system, competition is encouraged. Those who innovate, those who apply their minds to a problem and solve that problem will be rewarded because they have control over their own lives and they own that innovation. They can patent it. It's not always perfect. It's never been perfect, but it's the best and it's system, and it's really the default system. People think that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will say that, capitalism hasn't been around for very long. Well, no, I beg to differ. Capitalism is the default system. If communism crumbles and falls, and we've seen it happen over and over, what you have flourishing is capitalism. You have people building something, repairing something, growing something, and then you have them trading with others, and they can either profit or they will not profit, depending on a lot of circumstances, including how much effort they're willing to put into what they're building, repairing, growing, whatever. That's just a natural. In other words, capitalism is the default system. That's the system that you use when other systems that are artificially constructed out of some philosopher's mind fail. It's a natural system. It's a system that works for large groups, especially. Capitalism is unaffected by the number of people involved. Huge numbers can be involved. Billions of people can be involved in capitalism. And we can see the results of a capitalist society versus a communist society simply by looking at North Korea and South Korea. Or you could say East Germany and West Germany. East Germany was under a communist regime. West Germany was under a capitalist regime. West Germany prospered. East Germany had to build a wall to keep their own people in East Germany. And they had border guards, and they would shoot you if you tried to leave East Germany. And many people were shot trying to leave. So we have a similar situation, in some ways, over in, in the United States here, with other countries where people are desperately trying to get out of Venezuela because it's a collapsing. It's just, I mean, it's like Mad Max. If you look at some of the videos of what's going on in Venezuela, you have these motorcycle gangs that will hijack trucks and climb on those trucks and, get this, throw firebombs at the truck to get it to stop. And I've actually seen this on a video. You can see them throwing Molotov cocktails at the truck, and it's exploding and setting the truck on fire. And they're yanking out the driver, and they're just pillaging everything in that truck. And it's like 100 motorcyclists, and they just load up whatever it is on the back of that truck on their motorcycles, and they just drive off. And that is absolutely, that is the Mad Max scenario right there. That is that's not even similar. That's exactly what happened in the Mad Max stories, which is about what if society completely failed, what would, and there was no government at all. It was anarchy. And people desperately trying to find ways, means to survive just by stealing from others. And this is what happens. So this is, and there's so much chaos in Central and South America. And you could say, well, why is that? That's America's fault. Yeah, maybe. Not so much America's, but how about the elites who are the internationalists, who, yes, some of them are Americans, and some of them aren't Americans. And you could say, well, it's the CIA. And yeah, that's true. The CIA does come in, and they try to destabilize. But who is actually in control of the CIA? Who do the leaders of the CIA actually work for? Is it the President of the United States? I don't think so. I mean, you can just look at John Brennan. Is he a loyal citizen? Is he loyal to America? Is he loyal to a president who was duly elected by the American people? No, John Brennan is not. John Brennan's loyalties do not lie with the duly elected President of the United States, who were elected by American citizens. And all the people who complain about Trump, and that's fine to complain about Trump. But when people start talking about killing Trump, assassinating Trump, calling him a traitor just for meeting with Putin in a public forum, just like he met with many other world leaders, and all presidents do this. They meet with foreign leaders. This is what you need to do. To call him a traitor for that, I mean, that's just out of control. That's just really irresponsible. And I have to wonder almost about John Brennan's sanity. This guy is, and so many of them, they really have, there's something wrong with them. Either that or they are being directed to behave that way by someone else, by someone, we don't know who it is. The deep state, that's what a lot of people are calling it. That would be a secret cabal of people who I would call internationalists or globalists, whose goal is to make something happen to the United States that is not in the best interests of the American people. And that would be the destruction of the capitalist system and the United States, the destruction of the United States as we know it, the destruction of the Constitution, the ripping apart of the Constitution. Remember what George W. Bush said? The Constitution is nothing but a GD piece of paper. That was George W. Bush's attitude. And you have people on the left actually saying that Donald Trump is worse than George W. Bush. How is that even possible? How is that even possible to make a comparison like that? George W. Bush, who started two useless, pointless wars, at least useless to the American people. And we are still fighting those wars. And American soldiers and taxpayer dollars are still being expended to fight those endless wars. Well, you could say, well, there is no war in Iraq. Yeah, well, that is not true. And there's definitely, I mean, these conflicts are going on as we speak in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Of course, America has bases, and the CIA is fighting secret stuff, doing secret things. The CIA was running drugs into the United States. They were run illegally back in the 80s, and this is very well documented, running guns out of Mena, Arkansas, down to the Contras. Then on the way back, they'd pick up the drugs, bring them back. So it was a triangle. It was Mena, Nicaragua, I think Colombia, where they would get the drugs, back to Mena, and that's how they funded their operation. But that's how the CIA has funded its secret operations for decades, many decades. In the Vietnam War, they were doing it. Heroin from Southeast Asia, hidden in the coffins of dead U.S. soldiers. How many governments has the CIA destabilized and or overthrown, literally overthrown? Democratically elected governments, maybe because they were kind of left-wing. And yet now the left is making a hero out of the CIA leadership. The FBI has been caught so many times in illegal behavior and acts, it's just unreal. It is unreal. For its entire existence, both the FBI and the CIA have been involved in illegal activities, partly to provide a show so that their glory is aggrandized, for their own aggrandizement, for their own legitimacy, to justify it, for their status, for their budget, to justify their budget. And they frame people. The FBI, that's what they do. That's one of the major things they do. A lot of men are in prison right now because they were framed by the CIA. And they were too dumb to understand what was happening to them. And then, because the FBI will convince them, well, you need to bomb this synagogue. And they go, bomb a synagogue, why would I want to do that? Well, you said on the internet that, you didn't like Jews or something. Well, don't you want to just put your money where your mouth is? In fact, we'll even pay you to put a bomb by the synagogue. Well, how much will you pay me? It's like, we'll give you all this money, $40,000. Oh, $40,000, wow. That's like 2 years' wages for somebody this. Some unemployed guy who's got a pretty low IQ. And he goes, well, I don't know. I could get in trouble. I don't want, oh, no, you won't get in trouble. We'll just do everything. We'll give you the bomb. We'll set it all up for you. All you have to do is place the bomb and then just press this button on the cell phone. That's all you need to do. And of course, finally, he wants the money. So they put it, they press it. Of course, nothing happens. Then immediately, the FBI says, okay, you're under arrest, buddy, for terrorism. And then the headlines the next day, FBI arrests terrorists trying to blow up synagogue. They look great. And this guy is sitting in prison. But he says, I was tricked. That's what they go to, they always plead innocent. And their lawyer says, well, this is entrapment, Your Honor. But this is entrapment. Well, my client, blah, blah, blah. He's just doing it for the money. He doesn't know any better, and, whatever. So, at least 20 guys are in prison as a result of that, and with long, long prison sentences. And they just do it over and over and over and over. And what does it do? It makes them look good. Ah, the FBI got another terrorist. Yeah. And, there's just one article, like in the New York Times and a few other places, and there it is, and then people forget about it. It just doesn't resonate, for some reason. But, so here we have somebody like Comey who's like, I'm completely honest, I'm honorable, I'm amazing, I'm a true patriot, in the FBI, Comey, Comey, who actively wants to bring down the President of the United States. Because why? Because he doesn't like him. He thinks he's horrible. Same thing with Brennan and many of these other people. They don't like Trump. And why do they not like Trump? Because Trump is actually honest. Trump is not owned by the multinational corporations. Trump is not a member of the deep state. Trump is not in Skull and Bones, like so many of the rest are. Trump is not into these secret societies. Trump is an old man who's had a very good life, very profitable, very smart, very wily. Remember, he comes from Queens, and he worked in Manhattan. And Manhattan has got to be one of the toughest places to do business in real estate in the world. You've got some really high-level people, high-energy, tough-minded people in Manhattan. That's just the way New York City is. So he comes from this world, and to him, politicians seem like rather innocent, naive children in some ways, who really don't understand the complexities of the world. They're really very simple-minded in some ways, many, many politicians. They're really not that bright. And so Trump is actually more qualified to deal with somebody like Kim Jong-un and Putin and Macron and Theresa May and Angela Merkel than most other people, in my opinion. Because he is used to working with people and competing with people and making deals with people that are way tougher than those people and way smarter than those people. For the most part. And those people, most of them, Macron, Theresa May, Angela Merkel, and others, they are the ones under the sway of the globalists. They have their masters, the puppet masters upstairs, who are running the show, and they say, we have to get rid of the sovereignty of France. We have to get rid of the sovereignty of Britain, of the UK. We have to get rid of the sovereignty of Germany. And the people in Germany are absolutely freaking out because they're thinking, many of them are thinking, well, they're trying to take our sovereignty away. We like our country. We like our culture. And the French people the same way. You know, not so much in France, but in Germany people are really beginning to wake up because Angela Merkel has this open door policy. We're going to bring in millions and millions and millions of people into Germany. So when you are in a town of 1,500 people in Germany, a little town, a village, and 500 young men, mostly young men, come into your town and they don't have anything to do, they don't have a job, they get a check every month from the German government, but they don't have anything to do. They can't even speak the language. Maybe they learn the language. What are they going to do? The Germans don't have enough jobs even for themselves, much less to create jobs. So what are they going to do? They can work for less and take the jobs away from the German people. Of course they're going to work for less. Usually they're from Africa. They're willing to work for less. Why not? Down in Africa they didn't get very much money at all. It looks good in Germany. Germany is a very prosperous, beautiful place. If you haven't been there, it's got really beauty. Of course, all of Europe has tremendous beauty, tremendous prosperity. I mean, you drive around in Europe, you drive around in the UK, and I mean, just the quality of the cars alone. The housing, it's amazing. The housing is it's way better than the housing in the United States for the most part. I mean, everything looks so permanent. It's like that house looks like it's been there for 400 years. And by golly, it has been there for 400 years. And it'll be there for another 400 years, unless someone physically knocks it down. But who would not want to go and live in Europe? Especially, I mean, if you didn't have to have any money, you didn't have to have any education, no language skills, and you were taken care of by the government. I would love that myself. But they wouldn't let me do that. They wouldn't let me just move over to Europe and just live there with no money. No, I'm not one of the favored. I'm only an American. If I were living in Africa, I could come over and I could be given a nice place to live in Sweden or France. In fact, the plan is, Macron recently said that 150 to 200 million people would immigrate from Africa by 2030. They would be living in Europe. Well, you know how many people Europe has? All of Europe itself has about 500 million people. So if you have if you have 200 million, 150 to 200 million, that's who was coming from Africa to France to spread over. Mostly, I guess they'd be in France, but they'd spread over Europe because with the EU, you could go wherever you want. If you get in trouble in France, you could just move to a different country. Just no border check, nothing. You know, that's what happens. They kill somebody, they rape somebody, and they just go to a different country. And they think they're safe. And a lot of times they are. But that's almost half would be Africans. And Macron said, yeah, it'll be Afro-Europe. Europe as we know it will be gone forever. Everything will be different. And after that, people just absolutely freaked out when he said that, publicly. He made this announcement. And he did walk it back because he realized they're not ready to hear this. But You know, they say, oh, we need new blood. You know, the Europeans, the white people aren't reproducing. So we need to. Well, excuse me, that's what always happens when you have a very prosperous society. And also you don't encourage people to have children. And you scare them by saying, if you have children, you're going to destroy the planet because of global warming. There are too many people on the planet. So white people listen to that and they go, well, I guess I better not have any children. Plus, I'm busy at work and I got my career, and so I just won't have any children. It'll be good for the planet. Well, first of all, to say that the planet is warming because of human activity is a falsehood. That is a lie. That is a hoax. Even the people who believe that humans are influencing the climate say that maybe there's a few percentage, you know, because I asked a climatologist once, what percentage of global warming is caused by human activity? And he said 75%. And I said, 75%? That's more than the influence of the sun. Are you telling me that humans influence the climate more than the sun? And he goes, Leck, well, it's because of all the people. We have too many people on the planet. That's what he said. Well, you know, he didn't go on to say that most of the people on the planet are living on about a couple of bucks a day. I don't think their carbon footprint is very, very high. And that's what it is. It's all about carbon dioxide. Most people don't even understand that the whole purpose of preventing climate change is to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's what it's about. Do people even know what carbon dioxide is? They probably think, oh, carbon dioxide, that sounds really bad. And in fact, the EPA has ruled that carbon dioxide is a toxic gas harmful to human health. That is a fact. But did you know that carbon dioxide is absolutely necessary for life on planet Earth? That without carbon dioxide, plants would not grow. They breathe carbon dioxide. They need carbon dioxide. Humans expel carbon dioxide. When we breathe out, we're breathing out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen. With plants, it's the opposite. They breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So it's a system. It's part of a system. And in fact, there's not too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. There's too little carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. If we had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we would see not droughts, floods, desertification, as the climate alarmists would tell us and try to make us believe. No, we would actually see an increase in the floral life on planet Earth. More plants would grow better. You would have less desertification rather than more desertification. So it's actually a good thing that the carbon dioxide level is going up on planet Earth. We're still recovering from the Ice Age. People don't think about that. They don't remember. They're never told in school about how the planetary system works anymore, apparently. You know, that the Earth has been gradually warming ever since the end of the Ice Age. And why did the Ice Age end? Well, the Ice Age ended because the planet warmed. And the sun, of course, you might say, okay, the sun, well, the sun, yeah, does have an effect on planet Earth, but it's not the major effect. You know, it's actually humans that warm the planet, not the sun. No, I beg to differ. No, the sun Without the sun, there would be no life on planet Earth at all. It would be a dead cinder floating through space. Now, the sun actually provides the warmth and the heat. And guess what? The sun is not steady. It has a steady state. It waxes and wanes in its temperature, in the amount of BTUs it's putting out, it's radiating out. And it has a cycle, and it's a roughly 11 or 12-year cycle. And right now, we are in what's known as the solar minimum. Solar minimum is when it's reduced activity in the sun, virtually no sunspots. That means cooler temperatures on Earth. And so for the next 4 years or so, we're going to see cooler temperatures on planet Earth. And you can say, well, they said it's the hottest on record. Well, they're cooking the books. They're lying about the temperatures. They say, with the glaciers are melting. Okay, where's the sea level rise? Why is Manhattan not underwater? Why is Miami Beach not underwater? It's not, because there is no sea level rise, or not enough even to bother with, to be worried about. So that's all there is for today. Have a great weekend and sleep well.